In her book Visible Identities, Race, Gender, and the Self, Linda Martin Alcoff argues against the notion that identity differences lead to fragmentation or essentialism. She rejects the idea that identities are merely imposed on individuals and groups by others, and defends identity as an epistemically salient and ontologically real entity. Alcoff acknowledges that race and gender are visible identities that shape how individuals perceive and are perceived by others. These visual markers of identity hold significant power and cannot be easily dismissed or ignored. Structural power relations, such as those influenced by global capitalism, play a determining role in shaping the meanings of our identities, social interactions, and the formation of differences. However, Alcoff emphasizes that power primarily operates through the personal sphere of our visible social identities. The book is divided into 4 parts, with the first section titled, Identities Real and Imagined. Alcoff critiques the tendency to pathologize identity, recognizing the cultural anxiety surrounding it. While she acknowledges that some identity constructions pose serious difficulties, she argues against generalized attacks on identity and identity politics. Alcoff contends that social identity itself is inherently problematic, but the main issue lies in a lack of understanding of what identities truly entail. To support her argument, Alcoff presents critiques of identity, categorizing them into political and philosophical perspectives. She identifies problematic assumptions within these critiques, such as the belief that identities lead to political disasters or restrict individual freedom. Alcoff offers a reimagined conceptualization of racialized and sexed identity, one that acknowledges the role of multiple others in shaping an individual's interpretive horizon and leading to the development of distinct embodied knowledges. While these identities are socially constructed, the interpretive process is both individual and social, influenced by the concepts, narratives, values, and meanings available within one's social and discursive context. According to Alcoff, social identities become differentiated based on perceptual orientations that are largely rooted in embodied identities. She emphasizes that the effort to establish meaning is performed by individuals and subject to modification through critical reflection, but it is always conditioned by the social and discursive context in which one exists. Overall, Alcoff aims to move beyond viewing identities as inherently problematic, and instead focuses on exploring the historical formations and political implications of race and gender as influential visual identities within American society. In the subsequent sections of her book, Alcoff delves into specific issues related to embodied identity. In Section 2, titled Gender Identity and Gender Differences, she criticizes the identity crisis in feminist theory and presents her perspective on gender differences and sexed identity. Alcoff argues that acknowledging the biological distinctions between men and women, particularly concerning reproductive capabilities, does not necessarily lead to essentialist claims. Instead, she posits that women's embodied identities as potential child-bearers grant them a unique interpretive horizon that shapes their worldview. Similarly, Alcoff explores the epistemological and ontological differences stemming from racialized identities in Section 3. Racialized identities and racist subjects. She discusses racial embodiment, racism, and whiteness, highlighting how racial identities shape individuals' experiences. In Section 4, Latino A Particularity, Alcoff examines the challenges posed by the Latino A identity within the existing racial categorization practices in the United States. Throughout these sections, Alcoff emphasizes the historical context and fluidity of identities, arguing that while identities may be linked to oppressive structures, disregarding or seeking to eliminate racial identities does not alleviate racism. Failing to recognize the ontological significance of racialized identities only perpetuates the marginalization of people of color. Alcoff's overall argument revolves around the consideration of visible identities, while acknowledging the multifaceted forces that construct social identity categories. She emphasizes that identities matter, and that social identities provide deep features of the self, connecting individuals historically, culturally, and experientially to the world. Alcoff acknowledges that identities are mostly unchosen, similar to our bodies, but they can be reshaped and require interpretation. However, one critique of Alcoff's focus is her exclusive emphasis on visible identities, downplaying the significance of class and sexuality as identities that are not visibly marked on the body. While she justifies this focus by noting that visible identities hold more weight in the material culture of the United States, it can be argued that our belief in the supremacy of visible identities overlooks the impact of invisible identity categories. One's invisible identities shape their interpretive horizon just as much as visible identities do, and people rely on more than visual cues to perceive one another.